Hi there. For many centuries, the secrets of the construction of the Egyptian pyramids excite the minds of not only researchers, but also all who are interested in the development of mankind. Many scientists claim that in preparing for the construction of the pyramids, the Egyptians did astronomical calculations so that the location of the giant man-made objects corresponded to the position of the planets. In Egypt, there are about 100 pyramids. Many of them are so amazing that travelers came to admire them, and even in the days of the ancient Romans and Greeks. The Great Pyramids at Giza were built in the 27 to 25 centuries BC. The most famous among them is the Great Pyramid of Cheops, which was built about 4.5 million years ago. Before the Eiffel Tower appeared, the Pyramid of Cheops was considered the tallest building on Earth. Originally, the pyramid had a height of 481 feet, but even today, when its summit is destroyed, the highest point is at 455 feet. The Pyramid of Cheops is still a magnificent sight. Each side of the Great Pyramid is 756 feet long. This is almost twice the length of a football field. Inside the pyramid is the burial chamber of the pharaoh, which is comparable in size to a small house. Cheops, the king called Herodotus in his writings, the Egyptians themselves called him Khufu. There is a meager amount of ancient Egyptian sources about how the pyramid was built. Around the finished structure, all traces of activity were carefully removed. Much more information gives us unfinished pyramids. For example, in Saqqara, next to them are the possible remnants of auxiliary facilities and tools, as well as there are better visible technical problems of construction. It is sometimes believed that the pyramid is large, regular cubes neatly folded in rows. But in the fracture of the pyramid Khufu, done by the Arabs, who were looking for treasure in the Middle Ages, it is clear that the laying is irregular. Stones of different sizes, and in some places there is a solution. At the base are large blocks, and towards the top they become smaller. There are several hypotheses about the construction of the pyramids. For example, assumptions about ramps encircling the pyramid. To modern man, the erection of such huge structures in ancient times seems like a miracle, profound by an extraterrestrial civilization. But the pyramids very harmoniously fit into the context of the culture of ancient Egypt. The construction technique of the pyramids is complex, but important details have recently been discovered that explain how they built such a magnificent structure. Scientists of the French Institute of Oriental Archaeology in Cairo and the University of Liverpool came to the conclusion that the Egyptians themselves built the pyramids of Egypt, and not any aliens or representatives of a more developed civilization. Expedition members found the ruins of a ramp, a sloping plain of sand, which helped with hard work. It turned out that the ramp was built about 4,500 years ago. Just then, the Egyptians built the Pyramid of Cheops. The ramp was located in the eastern desert of one of the quarries, where massive calcareous blocks weighing 2,500 tons were cut down for the pyramid, which later went to the lining. According to one of the leaders of the archaeological expedition, the found ramp was probably needed to pull out the cut blocks from the quarry. They were dragged on sleds, pulling them up with ropes thrown over vertical wooden poles. In the ramp there are holes in which they were inserted and the stairs in the steps of which the porters rested. Archaeologists believe that this ramp allowed them to overcome a slope of 20%. It's difficult to talk about how long the construction took. Herodotus, an ancient Greek historian of the 5th century BC, wrote that for 20 years they had built a road to the pyramid. Perhaps this was a ramp, and for 10 years they had built the pyramid itself. But the fact that Herodotus did not know the Egyptian language is important, and therefore he could have misunderstood what he was told. More reliable information is the ancient Egyptian inscriptions on the stone blocks from which they built the pyramids. But most of these inscriptions are hidden in the thick of the pyramids because these are the working notes of the ancient builders. And the unfinished structures sometimes find such notes, which recorded the name of the construction team and the date when the work was completed. Perhaps teams competed with each other. Only highly qualified specialists were engaged in construction. Architects and the pharaoh himself observed during his lifetime how his own tomb was being built. A huge number of not-so-qualified people were involved in the quarries and on the delivery of the stones. It is assumed that only about 30,000 people were employed at the construction site. It was a large-scale example of the division of labor in the history of Egypt. When some were building, others provided the building with all necessary, and still others managed the process. Near the 3 pyramids at Giza, archaeologists have found a settlement for builders, and excavations have been carried out there since the 60s of the 20th century. The necropolis was also found, where the tombs are located, as well as the poor burials of the workers who died during construction. The American expedition of Mark Lehner at Giza, at the end of the 20th and beginning of the 21st century, discovered production facilities that served the great construction site. Copper smelting workshops were found in which they made tools for building pyramids. A huge industrial complex was aimed at making food for feeding the masses of workers, baking shops, breweries, pantries for dyeing fish. Also found were places where sacrifices were offered to the late kings. This material told about the wealth of society in the heyday of the construction of the pyramid, as they sacrificed young, not old animals. In 2011, on the shores of the Red Sea, French archaeologists found the port since the construction of the Great Pyramids. From this harbor, the Egyptians sailed to Sinai, where they mined copper ore. Found papyruses contain very interesting data on the construction of the Pyramid of Cheops. Today we see, as it were, stepped pyramids, but initially the building was perfectly smooth, lined with white limestone. Brought from the other side of the Nile, and to bring the stone closer to the pyramid, channels were laid from the river. This confirms a find that was made in 2013, the diary of one of the masters, who headed one of the group of builders of the pyramids, found by scientists. His records speak in favor of the water hypothesis. Limestone moved along the river and canals. The builder described how his team participated in the construction of giant dams, so they redirected the waters of the Nile through artificially created channels to the very base of the pyramid. Facing the pyramids of Giza removed in the Arab period, it was used to build medieval Cairo mosques. The pyramids themselves were built from local limestone. The expedition showed that the quarries were located no more than 1,000 feet from the construction site. Giza was chosen as the place where there is enough limestone for construction, but for some works, materials were carried from afar. The burial chamber inside the Pyramid of Cheops is lined with huge granite slabs. They were driven almost 650 miles from the south of Aswan, where there were granite quarries. In Aswan, the parts went through rough processing. They were marked, and the granite slabs were polished in place. The grandees, who supervised the works, wrote in their tombs with pride that they had been the ones sent by the king for material for the pyramids. The officials coped with the task, and the king praised them. The reward could be permission to build your own tomb, closer to the king's pyramid. Pharaoh was buried in a room that was located directly under the top of the pyramid. False corridors and impassable stone doors were built below, which were supposed to protect the tomb from thieves who came for the pharaoh's treasures. After the pharaoh's death, who was mummified and the body was placed in a ready burial chamber. Together with him were things that were packed that the pharaoh in the other world could have thought were useful. Among these things were clothes, weapons, jewelry, furniture, statues, and even a bath. Many items were made of pure gold. Because of such tremendous wealth, the tombs constantly attracted the attention of thieves, and despite the intricate system of moves, almost all the tombs were looted. The Pyramid of Cheops is included in the complex of ancient monuments on the Giza Plateau in the suburbs of the Egyptian capital, Cairo. It is the only surviving monument of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.